Hey, Stan Tall with Dave Brown, here with producer Paige. Paige, how you doing today?
We're good. We're ready to roll.
Yeah, we are. We got two special guests from Colorado. We got Lori Gimmelstein and Brad Miller, and they are fighting a really tough fight in Colorado. So thank you for being on Stand Tall with Dave Brown. So we
Thanks.
appreciate you guys.
Thanks a ton for sure. Yeah.
Well, we just wanted to let everybody know that Colorado's got a lot of issues. Obviously, no time in our history we had just an easy route in politics. Politics is always moving and going, but boy, the last 4 or 5 years, things have gotten pretty rough, and so it's not any different in Colorado. And so I think Lori and Brad today are going to be able to shed some light that'll help us all, no matter where we live. And I'm looking forward to what they can say that would benefit some of the listeners in Oregon or Florida or wherever the people. Just so you know, we try to have a little bit of humor here, Lori and Brad, but we are one of the top podcasts in Ghana.
We are.
So we are. So we're
Amazing.
proud of that.
Well, good luck with that. You brought a lawyer on. How are you going to get any humor out of that?
I never laugh at lawyers, Brad. There you go. So no, but Lori, I know you've put a lot of effort into everything you're doing. You've been in education. You know what's up. You're not just some random person out there just throwing out stuff. So tell us what's going on.
Yeah, well, thank you so much again for the opportunity to join you, Dave. We're so excited to partner with other states. Together, we're a lot stronger and have more impact. I run the Colorado Parent Advocacy Network, CPAN, here in Colorado, and our mission is really to restore the parents' voice and their ability to direct the upbringing, care, and education of their children. I've been in private practice as a speech pathologist for over 2 decades. Moved here to Colorado when my husband was assigned a duty station here in Colorado in the Air Force. And we settled in one of the nation's largest school districts, the Cherry Creek School District, which is touted as a district of excellence. It's a destination district. And back in 2020, like many moms and dads across the country, I started to become alarmed at what was happening in our kids' classrooms. Two particular stories that were very poignant in really getting me engaged in advocating for my own family. Our daughter at the time was 11, and they had started going back to school in the small cohort. So everybody remembers 2021 and what a fun time that was. Everybody's masked, there was so much turmoil. Everybody's angry. George Floyd, Biden, Trump, Vax, it's just a terrible time in our culture. And our daughter came home from school and she shared with us that her friend Stella was now going to be River. And River was going to use he, his, him pronouns and use the boys' room. Now, again, this is 5 years ago. So this was before this kind of transgender craze that is influencing our youth today. And I had never heard anything about it. And I just thought I must have missed the email on this. And I made a comment to our daughter that was very progressive of River's parents to ask the school to do a workshop. And Jenny looked at me and she said, "Oh, no, mommy, River goes home every day as a girl. His parents have no idea." And I thought surely she was mistaken and that I would just figure it out. And 2 weeks after that, our son, who was 13 at the time in 8th grade, asked for some help on an English language arts honors assignment. And so I went and sat down at his desk and I look at the assignment, and the title of it is Why is your favorite hobby racist? And in order to get full points, he had to write racist against people of color. And the goal of this assignment was to create a charitable organization to fight racism in your favorite hobby. And he had created an organization called Lift to fight racism in skiing. And he was using words like segregationist, whiteness, anti-racism, all of these politically charged words that really shouldn't be part of the English language arts honors classroom. And I looked at Chris and I said, "You're going to get an F on this paper before you lie." And he's that kid that if he has a 99, he's going to fight for the 100. And he said to me, "You don't understand, Mom. I have to think one way at home and another way at school."
Wow.
And I just thought, we must have an activist teacher. And I started to do what we're supposed to do, meet with the teacher, meet with the principal. And then I realized that my children's middle school was completely woke. And so I thought, well, surely if I go to the Board of Education, they'll say this is unacceptable. This is controversial, sensitive issues. We had policy written on this that teachers couldn't teach sensitive issues like this without providing both sides of the argument, and it had to be developmentally appropriate. And then I realized that they were secretly hiding gender transitions from parents. Like this wasn't just a one-off or my daughter was wrong. We uncovered through FOIA requests here in Colorado, we call them CORAs, Colorado Open Record Act requests, that they had all these documents that they were giving to teachers that said, if you have a student that comes to you and says that they want to be transgender and they want to go by a different name and a different pronoun, you have to first ask if their family knows and if it's safe for the family to know. And if not, we're going to do all these accommodations. We got all these documents. We were just mind blown. And we went to the school board, we went to district administration, and we realized they don't care. They don't care that we don't want this happening to our children. They're doing it to them anyways. And so, kind of a long story short, I was going to focus on my school district and was encouraged to consider opening a statewide advocacy organization. In my role as a speech pathologist, I've been working in education for decades, helping families advocate for great support services for their students that have complex needs around language learning disabilities, complex communication disorders. And I've always seen parents railroaded in those meetings, IEP meetings. I'm sure anybody watching that has a kid that's on an IEP or 504, their least favorite time is going to that IEP meeting because the teachers, the staff oftentimes treat parents like that they are the least important component. And parents need to take back their authority. And that's what we're doing here in Colorado. And we are helping parents. We have an incident reporting tool. Right now, Dave and Paige, I have 59 active incident reports on my desk. And they range from anything from discipline concerns to families losing their child to Colorado Protective Child Services for not gender affirming their child.
You guys, when you said, the educational system, I spent 20 years in the school, 4 on school board, Judy 34 years. And when you say they don't care, a lot, they just don't care. I mean, they allow grade school kids, parents to kind of be involved in the simplicity of grade school. It's great. But by the time they get to middle school, they start to stiff arm. And the parents aren't so welcome unless they're raising money. You get to the high school, and the only parents they want are the booster club, athletic, extracurricular activity help. And after that, it's stiff arm all the way. So, Brad, what do you say about that? I mean, you want to jump in there on that?
Well, this is the second time recently that I've had to follow Lori in a presentation, and I just stumble behind her. She's so glib and so wonderful and a great storyteller. I went to Northwestern for law school, and it was kind of like the beginning of a bad joke. I'm an evangelical. It was me, a Mormon, and an Orthodox Jew were the Federalist Society.
Sorry.
We were the conservatives, and as Dave and I were kind of chatting pre-show, it's kind of a lonely business to be a conservative attorney, and particularly in the education sphere. They were teaching critical race theory at Northwestern back in the 90s when I was in law school, and I thought that was an ivory tower thing. But fast forward to my practice here in Colorado, and it was very much implemented in the K-12 educational sphere. And so I began to be very attuned to efforts on how to protect parental rights in education. We're in a blue state. Our legislature, as we get to the current landscape, we can talk about things that are going on now, but our legislature and our leadership is determinedly progressive. And so the only good news is that in Colorado, our educational governance is oriented around local control. The school district has a broad authority to put things into place. And so starting in the mid 2010s, I started really working hard to find places and to cultivate governance structures, e.g. board members that would be aligned with parents and try to work towards getting the local districts at least to align with their parental values in the places where they were. And so that, frankly, in a blue state like ours, has to be the effort, because we'll talk about what's going on with our Colorado High School Activities Association and our legislature in a bill called House Bill 1312, which is just a very explicit grant of rights of agency to children to express themselves, and outside of their parents' authority and even insight. So, but the big focus for me has been, let's win the war at the local level. Let's get the right people in place to lead. And we've had some success recently, and I'm looking forward to talking about that.
Paige, anything yet there? I know Paige warms up her questions and then she comes firing away. So,
Well, I guess my biggest thing is, I mean, you guys are both like incredibly smart and in it, but like for the average Joe parent, like where do they start? I mean, because that can feel so overwhelming. I'm hearing this, and this is just affirming why I pulled my kids from the system, just even here in Oregon. I mean, we first moved here, just to be brief, and I went to a meeting where they were going to talk about, they just changed the sex ed curriculum. And it was supposed to be a question and answer night. And they gave us sticky notes to put on a board so we could discuss amongst ourselves as parents. We couldn't actually ask the district officials these questions. And they had a gal from the state who was a young 20-something, probably no kids, just completely treating us with contempt. Like we were just these backward bigots for not wanting my kindergartner to learn gender ideology. I just feel like it's a little young for that, right? And so I guess my thought is, because that can feel so overwhelming, how do we start? Like what are some practical first steps so we can get in on this fight and make a difference?
Lori, I'm going to let you answer it, but it's funny. I told you Paige asked great questions because, that was like down the bottom of the list, like the.
Oh, sorry.
No, coming home, but it's probably the question of the day, honestly. We're all here to try to advocate and help parents. Lori and I talked about that earlier. So I told you, Lori, Paige will bring it. So what do you got there to answer that one?
Well, I mean, that is the fundamental reason that our organization exists, because we realized that parents were being railroaded and they had no advocacy support. There was no accountability from school boards and district administrators to the consumer, which is the parent that grants them permission to educate their children. And so thankfully in many states, in Oregon, a good friend of mine, Jeff, runs Save Oregon Schools. So parents in Oregon should definitely go on the internet and search Save Oregon Schools. And Jeff is a great resource. And there's other great national resources. We partner with the best of the best. Defending Ed, they just recently, they used to be Parents Defending Ed, and now they're Defending Ed. They're moving into higher ed as well. They have been great partners with state organizations and really bringing in all of these organizations across the nation so that we have the resources together. So we're not duplicating efforts, and we're helping each other, and we're helping more and more families. So in the state of Colorado, parents can just go to coloradoparents.org, and right on our website, we have our incident reporting tool. So if a parent has a concern, an educator has a concern, a student, they can submit those incidents, and then we contact them and we walk them through the entire process. So that oftentimes involves looking at school board policy. And what's really exciting about this is every time we bring in a new incident report, we give them the tools to do this, and then they can help another parent. So, what we're doing is we're really building out this infrastructure for parents to have the tools and resources and to know that they can take an authoritative lead on parenting their child. I think the school systems have done I don't want to say incredible because it's horrible, but they've done a job in such a way that they have taken the role and responsibility of parents away from them intentionally. And it's very frightening. But Save Oregon Schools in Oregon, coloradoparents.org here in Colorado.
I love that. Yeah.
Hey, Brad, on that one, how did Colorado get to the point because I know where we're at in Oregon with the courts.
Hmm.
How did Colorado get to the point where they could possibly, this is one of the, Lori, you want to talk about this, but we're talking about real cases here about custody and literally taking a child away from their parents over this stuff. At what point did the Colorado courts start affirming those decisions?
Well, a couple of things have happened. We've passed in our Anti-Discrimination Act, protections for gender identity and gender expression, and then our and then school districts like Lori's local district have adopted policies to say that that explicitly gives children the agency, the right to make their own decisions. My clients, those that will be willing to work with me, we agree that the Supreme Court jurisprudence, the laws issued by the Supreme Court in past holdings informs us that parents are the authority in the education of their children, and that extends to decisions like, can they be on an IEP, an individualized education plan, or can they go on a field trip, or can they have sunscreen applied? Well, so certainly it would be the case that if they're going to change their identity, that parents have to sign off on it. And so it's only sensible that we would go down the path of saying, well, it's, the school can help facilitate and work on these things, but parents have to sign off. Parents have to agree. But because of the way that the laws were articulated, in particular one that passed last year called the Non-Legal Name Change Bill, that gave children ostensibly the right to determine what their names and pronouns would be in education, and it purports to say that children can do it. That's the sort of thing that the legislature's done, and our courts are mostly Biden appointed and Obama appointed, and or governor appointed in the state court system, and so we don't have a lot of great conservative jurisprudence going on here. So we're always shooting as we think about cases that might emerge, and we'll want to talk about the Colorado High School Association Activities Association, but those cases we need to get into the federal system because we need to push into the direction of the 10th Circuit and the Supreme Court to get some clarity, because frankly what Colorado's doing is anti-constitutional in some of these areas, very much so.
So does the CHSAA stand for, again, what?
Colorado High School Activities Association. It's two
Activities.
A's.
In Oregon,
I always
it's
want to say,
OSAA.
yeah.
But every state has one. They have something.
Yeah, it's the organization that runs, all of the competitions and the track meets and whose eligibility issues and transfer issues and all that. Right.
So I had a question for all three of you guys. Paige, you're on the Mountain Dew hot seat too. My question is what I still fail after 20 years working in education, 44 years as a head coach. It baffles me that how is it in your viewpoint that we think a 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old can make any kind of decision, even remotely close, other than making a peanut butter and jelly or a ham sandwich? When we're talking about life-changing, body-changing stuff, average adults out there in Colorado and Oregon are saying, yeah, that's cool. What do you say to that?
We literally have rules that say kids can't have sunscreen applied to them for recess by a teacher without parental consent. And yet our legislature wants to give teachers the right to transition students. It's crazy. And to give children the right to do that. They're passing these laws and they have been challenged. They will continue to be challenged, but getting the foothold in our local courts is really difficult.
Okay. Paige, Lori?
I mean, I agree. I just think also, when you also look at the sad other side of like detransitioners, is it the schools who come along and clean up that mess they made, or is it the parent that has to come in? Also, my other thought is, if I'm not responsible, then why do I have to pay the insurance coverage for them to go through all these medical procedures in order to transition? Like, why am I on the hook for that, but I can't be in the decision-making process as the parent? Besides the fact that they're, 9 and today think they're a girl and tomorrow might think they're a dragon. Besides that immaturity level, like, why am I on the hook for this if the school clearly is the one who's going to be raising my child now?
It's forever been the progressive viewpoint that they are the experts and that they have better judgment and better discernment than parents do. It's that audacity that has just swept across, at least in our law in Colorado, probably in Oregon as well.
Hey, Brad, you said you had a tough act to follow. Lori, I was going to say, Lori, you got a top page now. That was a pretty good response. What do you got?
She'll taught me.
Well, what we're seeing is we're seeing adults that want to insert their authority into our children's lives and cause them actual harm. I have no doubt that they know what they're doing. When you talk to your neighbors and everyday people, everybody knows this is ridiculous. This is, it's common sense for parents to be able to parent. It is not abusive to want to keep your children away from harmful ideology and harmful influences. I do that on an hourly basis when the kids are home, and it's a constant. Parenting is a constant decision making, reflection. You're talking about consequences of behaviors. You want to keep your children safe. And that's what parents have the sacred authority to do, as granted in our Constitution. And we have bad players. And I'm going to say this in our local government here, up at the Capitol in Denver, we have a lot of representatives and senators that call themselves Democrats, and they are not Democrats. Just like every organization, agency, institution has been hijacked. We have activists in education, we have activists in defense, we have activists in medicine leading all these medical organizations. We have activists at the Capitol, and several of them are fully admitted, saying that they are Democratic Socialists of America, and they hate our country, and they want to dismantle America and the principles of our founding. And they have hijacked the education system, and they're trying to codify all of these practices into law so that we cannot fight back. And we are in a very dangerous predicament right now in Colorado with this 1312, which is legal protections. It's disguised as legal protections for transgender individuals, and it's a complete disaster. And also, the executive orders that have come down, the majority of public schools are completely ignoring those executive orders from the Trump administration. And that's where, Brad came in and really kind of building out this letter for local school boards, directors and school administrators to sign in support of saying, you need to be following these executive orders, and we are requesting that you take an official stance. And so I think that this would be a great transition into, how everything is just activist driven and politically driven.
Well, I think what Brad said there makes a lot of sense. Sorry, Paige. I just real quick. I think he said, I've been talked down to a lot too. Like, they know more than I do. And I just a few examples. I don't want to say names here. And I look at their kids and they're a train wreck, and I'm like, and you are like, what do you got for a scoreboard here? And it just blows me away. But Paige, you were gonna say something.
Well, I just wanted to ask a question, because I love that we're trying to attack this in the courts. But I mean, we saw under both the Obama and the Biden administration that if they wanted to ignore what the court said, they just were going to do it. I mean, we see Trump kind of playing that game now as well. But how do we how do we safeguard and kind of watchdog the schools so that if the ruling, or, if we're able to fight this in the courts, the ruling comes down on our side, that they're still not going behind the scene? I've even seen where like some of the higher education schools are now changing, I know this is a little different, but DEI, they're not calling it DEI anymore. They're not going to call it prop, so that it looks like they're not engaging in DEI, but it's the same thing, but it's under a new name. So how do we, as parents, how do we also ensure that, okay, we got the win, now it's going to actually be enforced? There aren't going to be that activist teacher who's still going to slip in the gingerbread man without your knowledge.
In Colorado, the public schools have tripled down. We have superintendents literally sending out videos talking about how they're going to go against these executive orders. And their practice has been to rebrand Anytime a topic gets, heat in the media, DEI got changed to, in my school district, it was the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and then it became the Office of Equity, Culture, and Community Engagement, and so they just rebrand anytime things get hot. But the beauty of the thing is that we have right now in the Trump administration is we actually have an administration willing to investigate civil rights complaints. So during the Biden administration, civil rights complaints that we submitted were just ignored. We were working with Defending Ed and other organizations and the Trump administration on these Office of Civil Rights complaints and bringing attention to these school districts that are continuing to practice DEI and gender ideology.
Mhm.
Hey, one of the things we talked about, Lori, a little bit, but some of your real stories going on. I mean, Paige and I have a ton of stories out here. When you really get into the stories about how it's impacted a family, your family was impacted, for example, but you had a couple of ones up there, and I don't even know. You had one in Jefferson County. I won't say a name there unless you want to. And then you had another one about parent rights being stripped. And do you want to, talk about those at all?
Yeah, sure. Just kind of to these, I'll talk about 4 families that we're currently helping that have actually lost custodial rights for not gender affirming their children. And this is kind of ties into this House Bill 1312, but it also ties into students across the state and school board members who are really standing up to protect girls' sports and girls' safety and keeping biological males from participating in female athletics. And so I'll provide a kind of a brief overview of some of the families that we're helping and what the impact is. And this is just practice right now. This is not even codified in law. We're seeing this egregious practice happen to families, and it's devastating. So we have 4 families that we're currently helping. One is a dad whose 12-year-old daughter has been working with a school counselor in the state of Colorado. They redefined children that are ages 12 and up as youth. And so now youth have special rights to access mental health care without their parents' knowledge, consent, or involvement. And so children are getting connected with mental health specialists. And I put that in quotes because oftentimes these people aren't people with they're not psychologists or psychiatrists. These are people with a 4-year degree that take a 6-week training program, do a day of mock calls, take a test, and then they're talking to your kids. And we know that they have activists in these organizations, and the influence that these activists have on our children is severely significant. I mean, and in the state of Colorado, the law is that you must gender affirm. So our counselors are not allowed to explore why a child might be confused about their gender. Okay, they have to instantly affirm it. So we've got it's like a trifecta of disaster. But this dad is saying, no, you are not. You are my daughter, and I'm going to call you by your birth name. And we recently hosted the Rocky Mountain Summit on Safeguarding Children from Gender Affirming Treatment on April 6th. And we brought in the experts, right? Nobody here in Colorado is talking about the harms of these interventions in gender medicine and the treatments and, the irreversible procedures that they're performing on children, double mastectomies, having cross-sex hormones that cause brittle bones and delayed development and just issues all around that are really harming children. And so we brought all the experts in, and this dad brought his daughter to the event. And the following Friday, his wife took him to court. His ex-wife took him to court, and he lost 50-50 custody and went down to every other weekend. And he's required to take classes on how to gender affirm. We have another mom down in Durango, Cindy Stein. Her story was featured in the Daily Wire. We've been helping her since November when she filed an incident report. Her daughter was coerced by her math teacher at Durango High School to believe that she was a boy. And the daughter ran away in December because mom did not want to gender affirm. And she ran away to the teacher. And mom said she does not have permission to house my child. The school wouldn't help. The police wouldn't help. CPS wouldn't help. Everybody is the systems that are designed to support families and keep families together has been weaponized, and it's being used to keep families apart. And this teacher was actively harboring her daughter, and we worked with the police. The police said they weren't going to do anything, so we actually went to go retrieve her daughter. And right now, if 1312 wasn't in action and it was the law right now, I couldn't even talk about this right now without getting a $1,500 fine. So I do want to make that really clear as we get to 1312, that these types of conversations are going to end if that law goes into place. But we went, Cindy, the mom, called the teacher and said, please have my daughter pack up her things, and encourage her to willingly come out. And the next thing you know, the teacher says, nope, I'm calling the lawyer, and the police. 911 was called. It was so embarrassing for the La Plata County Police Department, the way they handled this situation. They essentially went in and they asked the daughter, are you good? Are you good? Never separated her from the teacher and her husband, who identifies as a transgender woman. And she said, yeah, I'm good. The police officer said, thanks, that's all I needed. He helped me check some boxes. The two deputies went outside, and we, of course, requested their body cam footage. That's how we know all this. And then one of the deputies said, oh, I guess we're going to have to go tell the mom. And the other officer said, oh, she's going to freak out. And then they both started laughing. They did not take a child that was being actively harbored. The custodial parent said, this adult does not have permission to have my child and will not give her back. That's called kidnapping. And so now her daughter is 18. We have learned that she is on cross-sex hormones, and they have changed her last name and her gender markers and her first name. It's just so alarming that an adult can go into your child's life and not be held accountable. Mm-hmm. That the systems designed to help the families would just allow them to do that. I mean, I just can't even imagine in our country that this is allowed. But there's several more stories that we could share. It could be a whole entire episode. But we also have to talk about the girls in girls sports. Recently, in the Thompson School District, the girls soccer team came forward at a school board meeting, and they just made a plea to the school board, to please protect them in their private spaces and in their sports. I mean, they're losing scholarships or getting hurt. We get incident reports all the time from families where their girls refuse to drink water at school, and they're coming home with severe headaches, very moody. And they're not drinking water because they don't want to go to the bathroom because there's a biological male in the bathroom. I mean, this is unbelievable. And this is where, Brad and the letter to the Colorado High School Athletic Association really comes in, because we have to take a stand.
Yeah. We went to a Canby High School tennis match last year. It was our first year not coaching. After Newburgh for 20 years, went to Canby, and my wife Judy went with me, two other ladies. And the girls called us, wanted us to come back and just watch them play. So we drove over there. It's about 20 miles away. Girls come up, saying hi, parents, it was great people. And one of the girls, junior in high school, said, Coach, what happened last week? She was like, I got to tell you, this is why we resigned from there and said, we're not going to coach girls tennis if we're going to have boys come in and play against us, pretending to be girls. Her and a bunch of girls go in to dress down for PE. They go into the locker room, and these are like junior seniors in high school, so they're not little kids. And boy comes in, 6'4", sits down on the bench, fully clothed, just starts staring at him. So they start yelling at him, get out, get out, get out, get out. He doesn't. He goes, no, I'm a girl today. And so they had to go around a corner by the bathroom stalls, look out for each other so they felt safe enough. They stayed together as a group. Again, shouldn't ever have to do that. They go to PE, and within 2 hours, they were all called into the principal's office and written up. Now, these are 3.5, 3.8, 4.0 students playing sports, band. I mean, these are, you're more accomplished high school kids at a big high school in Oregon. And they're written up. Kid, nope. Because he felt like they were mean to him and hate speech. And so it's just incredible. Like you would have thought 5-6 years ago, a guy going into a female spot like that would be arrested, taken out in handcuffs and taken down the road. So, again, your stories though back there, Paige, I know you're chomping. You got a question here, I could tell.
No, I want you to go because I know like these stories just infuriate me because I just feel like how are all these people getting into positions of authority where we can put girls in this position? We're putting parents in this position. I mean, I'm just fuming over here. Like, I'm honestly just angry.
I'll tell you how. It's the teachers union.
Yeah.
I mean, how do we break? I know you guys are doing such great work, but it's like, even with that bill, I mean, what's at stake with that bill, and how do we help you fight from here? I mean, I know you said there's the petition. Let's talk about that again. But also, like, how do we keep our head up? And how do we I think my biggest thing is, we always have, when we look at elections, those like undecided people. I don't know who they are, but apparently there's a bunch of people that don't pay attention to anything. How do we get them into this? How do we pull them to start participating? Like, how do they not want to protect their kids from this? I'm sorry, that's a lot, but I'm just mad.
Wow.
Do you want to start, Brad?
Well, so back in the 70s, I think it was 72, we Title IX was implemented, and Title IX, what is the purpose of Title IX? It was to give females an opportunity to have a sort of protected space, a safe way to compete, equal opportunities to excel in sports. It mandated that we have equal numbers of teams and all of these things, and there was friction around it because football was ascendant, and how do you give a girl's equivalent to that? But we jostled through it, and by the end of the 70s, we had this wonderful thing where women's sports were becoming really viable, right? We see the emergence of the WNBA and women's soccer doing such a good job, and all of these things. And then all of a sudden, a few years ago, Biden acts like it's somehow offensive that we're prohibiting transgender individuals from competing with the women. And so, as you know, February 5th, Trump issues an executive order keeping men out of women's sports. It was, all caps. It was a very prominent thing, and it was political, admittedly, but it went to the purposes of Title IX, which is to prohibit men from competing in women's sports. It's a fundamental right as it is in America now. And so, under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment and Title IX, it is actually law that men cannot compete in women's sports. It's very well grounded. And so 5 days later, Colorado High School Activities Association issues a missive to all of its member districts saying, hey, we saw the executive order, but hey, we're progressive and we don't think that really has bearing here in Colorado, and we're going to oppose it. It wasn't cowardice. It wasn't an abdication of a decision. It was a particular finger in the eye of the federal government saying, we're not going to comply. We're going to take the opposite tack, and we're going to encourage boys to compete as girls in girls sports in K through 12. And so a lot of people started to fume about this. Lori described a situation up in the Thompson School District where the girls' soccer team came very credibly to the board and said, we had to compete against a male. That was dangerous for us. It was, it made an unequal scenario for us. I work in a school district in Southern Colorado here where the girls' soccer team lost 2-0 to a team from another district that had a boy on it, and that boy scored both of the goals against our team. Yeah. It literally happens, and people say, well, it's very few and far between, but to the extent it ever happens, it happens. Yeah. And so leaders from school districts, including very sizable school districts and a number of rural school districts. So Colorado is, the front range. You think of Denver and Colorado Springs and Fort Collins as being sort of the primary areas of where people live. But we have 178 school districts, 150 of which are not in that area, and they have anywhere from 100 to 500 students in the district. Well, I drafted a letter on behalf of one of my clients. They started to distribute it, and 2 weeks later, I'm getting 2 and 3 phone calls a day from new districts who want to join in on this effort. It's really taking, it's a groundswell is coming. So we sent a letter a couple weeks ago to CHASA saying, hey, please revise your bylaws, take a stand here, just agree with us that boys should not compete as girls. And earlier this week, they responded to me saying, word salad, word salad, word salad. No, we're not going to do anything about it. And that has infuriated folks to the point where now, again, others are coming alongside, and we're going to challenge this very significantly. Lori's been super instrumental in helping to get the word out, but these sorts of things go to page your questions. I want to just jump from this just quickly to say, I sit at a school board meeting most nights of the week. I represent schools and school boards, so I go to a lot of these. I think the most effective things that parents can do are come, and we've all seen the YouTubes or on X, you see somebody at a school board and they're shaking their fist at the school board, or they're reading the objectionable materials out of a book and things like that. And those are all valuable. It also is super valuable to come thoughtfully, calmly, and just share your parent perspective in a more subdued way, just a direct manner. And for I have a relative who's in the state Senate, but and he tells me that it's rare and not often that legislators get letters from their constituents, and so they really kind of stand out. Those messages stand out. I'll tell you, in the school board context, 3 or 4 people aligned on the same topic, they really do have an influence on these school board members. It's not as though you're just being rejected. They might sit there grimly and not really respond to you, but it is having an effect. And so speaking out does matter. And that's what Lori's group and groups like Moms for Liberty and those folks have illustrated wonderfully, is that showing up, everything in life, right? Showing up is always the best thing.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Paige, your last comment there. This is all such good stuff. Appreciate you guys so much for what you're fighting for. About 6 years ago, by chance, at Canby, Oregon, the Clackamas County, they have the fairgrounds there, and it seats 11,000 people. And the Billy Graham Crusades came to there, and Franklin Graham was the keynote speaker. And so we went with 2 other couples. My wife Judy and I went to the pre-training thing. She wanted to help lead people to Christ. Well, when we got there that night, I just said, I'm always the head coach. I'm always doing something. I just want to sit and just be part of the crowd. And she goes, okay. My wife, she's tougher than nails. Paige will tell you. And she's like, so Judy goes off and she's just, 100 miles an hour, talking to people all over. She led like 3 people to Christ that night. She was so pumped. But Franklin Graham came out finally after the music settled down, and he said, what do you do? And he let it marinate for like 30 seconds. And I remember he just got my attention. And he's a big guy, tall guy. And we had pretty good seats. We're probably about 60, 70 feet from the stage. And then he said, what do you do? And I'm like, he had all my attention, but I had no idea what he was going to say. Now, remember, I'm just a coach. I coach basketball, I coach tennis, summer camps. I'm about as far away from politics and school boards as you can imagine. And then all of a sudden, he says, what do you do? And the whole crowd by this time is quiet. And he said, 45, 50 years ago, this is 6 years ago, local evangelicals and conservatives walked away from local politics, from New York to LA, from Texas to Montana, and our country's a train wreck, and if we got to take it back. He goes, I go all over the country and we're a train wreck. And I remember that just kept playing in my head. And that was what was the first seeds planted. I think the Lord was just working through Franklin Graham to somebody as stubborn as me. I never would have picked in a million years I'd be sitting here doing this with you 3. So now it's kind of like replace sports, and it's more competitive in sports. It's tough. But I have a question for all 3 of you, because Paige is, downstairs in the library, and we were trying to make a new thing work here. But so all 3 of you can answer this. But that was my moment to get me passionate enough to like do something. briefly, what triggered you? What got you to say, okay, enough?
I don't mind starting who if you guys want.
Sure.
So the two stories that I shared with you at the beginning of today's podcast, where my daughter had a classmate who was being transitioned secretly behind her parents' backs at school, and the really controversial school lessons that my son had. And for at first for me, it was a fight to protect my children. And our children are in safety. That we were able to get our children into safe programs, safe schools, know their teachers, really hold them accountable. And but I just had this continuing sensation like this is really important, and so many parents, they don't know what's happening, and so many parents aren't going to be vocal. They're not going to step up into this public square, and it because people are afraid. People are very afraid to lose their jobs. They're very afraid to have retribution by their friends and neighbors and their family. And thankfully, my husband and I, we spent a lot of time in prayer and discernment. We're Christians, but I'll tell you, my relationship with God has changed so dramatically over the last 5 years. I mean, I've always been a believer, but not in the way that I am now. I definitely feel like this is a calling. And I was working full time. I had a great career. I was helping families. I loved my life. And my husband, who was from the former Soviet Union, we sat down and we said to each other, we saw this as communism, 5 years ago when we were really starting to investigate what was happening in the books we were reading, Battle for the American Mind by Pete Hegseth and many other great books. And, we sat down and we said, what is the point of us working these careers that we've established ourselves in if we're going to lose our country and our children and our grandchildren? This country is a gift. There is no better place. There is no better idea than America. And I was talking to a good friend, Kane, who runs another parent group here in Colorado called Task Force Freedom. We have so many great local parent groups all over the state. Task Force Freedom, Grandparents for Kids, like just great groups. And he said to me, I said, Kane, I just don't know what to do. I just have this constant, my mind is just racing with all these ideas. And he said, Lori, you just need to say, okay. You just need to say, okay. And I did. And from that moment forward, people will say, how do you do all this? How do you get so much done? And it's with him. And I will always use that testimony. I feel very strongly called by our Father to do that. And I'm not ashamed of that at all. I'm very, very proud and very humbled that, I'm able to have the gifts that I've been given to help other families. And I'm very, very grateful.
That's a great thing to say. I appreciate that. Thanks for just sharing your heart. So, yeah, top that one, Brad or Paige. Go ahead.
Brad, you can go.
I was radicalized at a young age, and I'm an old dog now, but as a Christian, it was I felt drawn and called into ministry and that sort of work. I did some Christian political publishing in Southern California in the 90s, and I was listening one day to James Dobson interview on the radio a lawyer. And the lawyer said at some point in the conversation, just had this one throwaway line. He said, the American Bar Association recently did a survey, and 7% of lawyers proclaim a faith. And I thought, wow, that's stunning. That's a mission field. And so I went from what I was doing and actually applied at a late age. And we had three kids at the time, married, and we upheaved over to Northwestern. I told you a little story about how I was in the minority there, but to join that mission field. And long story short, I came out here to Colorado. It's for a variety of reasons, and there's this wonderful miracle story around that. But my wife, who's got this incredible Nebraska work ethic, farm work ethic, um, is always can do, and her continued theme to me is you just got to show up. You know, half a life is just showing up, and so we just try in faith to just be in the places and go to the things that the Lord draws us to, and all of a sudden I find myself in the middle of the culture war, and uh, every day I work with schools all the time. Just hundreds of folks associated with schools are my life, and it is so difficult right now because in Colorado, because the legislature is just putting us into positions of compelled speech and confusion around how to deal with children and all of this. It's absolutely a mission field. Wouldn't want to be anywhere else. And God's got this, and because of activists like Lori, because of great board members who have emerged in Colorado, I've got optimism and hope, um, and and we're moving things. And parents just need to be in support of the good guys. Think about if you're on a school board, you're not getting paid for it. You're doing it for some other reason, some intrinsic reason. If they're the good guys, get behind them, praise them, support them, encourage them, and then fricking get out and vote. Let's vote for school board members. It's the most consequential service that anybody can be in is serving our children. It's ministry. It's everything. So we all talk about, what's going to happen to our future if our kids or whatever. Well, let's be there for them. Let's vote for the right people to be in those school boards. I can't emphasize that enough. That's the thing.
Well, I think Brad just got his lawyer thing going on there. That was pretty good. I mean, old dog, Brad. I think you and I are both like in our early 40s, right? So I don't think we're all that old. So
I have my mid-40 high school reunion coming up. Yeah,
I know. Oh man, Paige, those are pretty good ones. What do you got?
They were really good. I mean, I just think I'm a mom that I've always been very interested in politics. I've kind of backed away from it as much because I feel like the bigger question is this what the Lord would want? But I've also come to realize, I mean, there's some evil stuff. And I think just as a mom watching, just like I said, that school board meeting, I didn't even have a child in the schools yet. We would be the next year. And realizing if they're already wanting to keep me out of the loop and make me feel like I'm the bad guy, this is a problem. And then really what sealed it was just, with COVID, I like to give a lot of grace with COVID. We didn't really know what we were doing. There's a certain point where it became ridiculous, but when we first began, we didn't know what we were doing. Everyone was trying to figure this out. So I give a lot of grace for that. But the fact that the schools here, I mean, my daughter's teacher was ready to go. Like she was ready to be teaching them online. I know that didn't work out well, but right from the get-go in that 6 week, remember that 6 week shutdown we all took, she was ready to keep them on track. And she was told, you have to stop because one child has not picked up their free internet, free Chrome browser. So we're going to hold 20 students back because of one kid. And I thought there's a problem here. There's a deep problem. And then just hearing friends of even with the restorative justice idea, that, we had a friend, their daughter was pushed down a staircase and they were told, well, there's not really anything we can do. Their daughter was luckily okay, but they ended up having to move school districts just to make sure their kid was safe. I mean, just all those little things, even Dave, you and I talking with the Carpenters, Rebecca and Sophia, there's a boy who's now competing and no one wants to stand in. It just, Lori, you talking about these families. I mean, my sister does foster care, and the amount of time and effort we will put in for a parent who really there's a long history of drug abuse, instability, not showing up for visits, and we will allow them to appeal the process of parental termination when it's very clear you can't handle a kid right now. You shouldn't have a child. And yet on the flip side, we'll do this to families where a parent is fighting, rightly so, to keep their child who they are and not be misguided by these cruel and sick, it's all like all those things just kind of keep infusing in me that there's a problem and we need to fix this.
Yeah, I think, that's, the one thing I don't think the four of us thought we'd ever be like, kind of in this situation. You see some of this stuff
No.
coming. And, Paige is right on the whole COVID thing. I mean, our athletic director came out on day 9 of that season, and Canby girls, we had 45 girls sitting there, and he just goes, "We're done." And I looked at him, I go, "Done what?" And it was just that blunt. Go home. And then the rest of the school year was canceled. We went to the next school year. It was crazy out here in Oregon, all the stuff that happened. I'm on a school board in Newburgh at the time, and it was insane, the stuff that was, the decisions that were being made, in Oregon, with Kate Brown, the governor at the time. It was nuts. But moving, to the end of this thing, it's so nice having you guys on here. Just letting everybody know, if you go to Apple CarPlay, Spotify, picking up Stand Tall, with Dave Brown. It's Stand Tall with Dave Brown, but it's really Paige and producer Rob and my wife Judy and Rose. We're all a team, and there's a lot of passion there. There's a lot of smarts there, except for me. I'm not the smart one, but we just really want to fight for this, and I look at it as like the most challenging coaching thing I've ever done, and it's coaching the people like what you guys are talking about that just need to know an action plan. They need to know what to move forward. Lori, you're kind of the star here today. So I think sometimes, what we want to do at Stand Tall, you guys, is we want that microphone to be with you. So if you can reach one more person, it's like, I think we're all, strong believers in Christ. It's like, if Stand Tall, we have education, politics, Jesus, sports, and people. There's a long story for why those came up. But if one person, through what Paige and I will call going Bible on you, comes to know Christ through all this effort, then isn't it worth it? And you never know when you're just building a wall. If you're just that brick in the wall, and 20 years later somebody comes to know Christ, or somebody gets involved in all the stuff we're involved in, we just plant the seeds, be there when we can, help it happen. So from that standpoint, I know Paige and I on here, Rob, Rose, Judy, we just thank you so much. And with the sponsor, we've talked about this, Lori, this morning, we'll come to Colorado. I think there's power in numbers. And even if you're a really smart, super educated guy like Brad, Brad is like all of us. He needs somebody to come alongside him and just encourage him, because some of these days get long. Boy, I never thought school board meetings were, till I first got there, I thought these were the smartest people in the world. And I get to my first school board meeting. I came home, and Judy said, look at me, she goes, "What do you think?" And I go, "These are the dumbest people I've ever met." And it was just crazy how, I say that in jest about how little they knew about education. I was like, wow. I mean, only one had been a college professor, and none of the other ones, were teachers at all. They didn't know. So Lori, wrapping up today, tell how everybody's listening out here how we can help you, and how we can get involved. What kind of website can we go to research more out what you're doing? And we did talk this morning, though, so I'm going to put the plug in for Lori, because I can tell she wouldn't ask. Money is always an issue for this kind of stuff. And, any donations at all to good organizations are great. And what Lori's doing in Colorado is fabulous. And $1 is encouraging. It might not be the amount of money that she needs, but it starts to help build the war chest up for lawyers, for fighting this, for materials, to do mailers. We need to do that out here too. But I'm telling you, when you're doing any type of coaching, which I did, and somebody would come and donate, $50 or $5 or whatever, it was encouraging. So go to her website, look for those opportunities to give dollars to what Lori's working on, and Brad. So Lori, wrap it up. Tell us what we can do for you.
Well, we're just grateful for the partnerships with our other states across the nation, and we got to be there for each other, help each other with resources and support. One of the things I want to call everybody's attention to, XXXY Athletics is a really great organization. Jennifer Say runs that here. We've got a few things happening. So coloradoparents.org is a really great destination. We always have an action item right on our homepage. We briefly talked about this bill 1312 that is just so egregious, and it will absolutely codify this practice of parents losing their children for not abuse, but for just simply calling their child by their birth name or by their biological pronouns if their child declares a different gender identity. It's also going to have huge impacts on businesses that will be fined if they misgender or dead name, using, I do this all the time. I'll see somebody that must identify as transgender and I call them he or him, and because they look biologically male to me, that'll be a fine. And it also is going to impact the media. Events like this, if that bill goes into law, we will not be having this discussion. And I think it's really important on the impacts on girls' sports, and the letter that Brad and his school board members and administrators from across the state that are signing. And I encourage everybody, I'm going to get a link to Brad's email onto our website. So if you're a school board member and you're a teacher or a board director, or administrator, you can sign on, because the more people that sign, it really helps shift the culture. And we need people to sign on for that letter. And we also need people to sign our petition to oppose House Bill 1312. And that's right on our website, right on the homepage, coloradoparents.org. And we need signatures in state and out of state. Right now, we've reached just about 25,000 signatures, all grassroots, not a penny spent. We're really excited about it. We're printing every single petition and hand delivering them on Monday to the Senate. And we just appreciate everybody's support. I do want to let everybody know we're an all volunteer run organization. My accountant was horrified that I don't take a paycheck and I work on average between 65 to 80 hours a week. But we're here to support the families. We're here to support the lawsuits, and we're here to support accountability and transparency so that we can return the power to the parents. And we're really excited about it. So thanks for having us on today.
Absolutely. And Brad, I got to tell you, I mean, lawyers take a bad rap sometimes, but I'm honored to meet you and all that you do to help Lori out in Colorado. And I know sometimes it's a long, thankless job, but much appreciated for what you're doing too.
Oh, thanks so much for this little chance to tell the story. I appreciate it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, Paige and I, we always say this, we're going to go Bible-y on you. So is it okay if we just finish in prayer?
Sure.
Paige, you or me?
You, it's your turn.
Oh, it's my turn this time. Yeah, Paige went last time. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for what Lori and Brad are doing, and with all the people that are alongside them. Thank you for Paige and I at Stand Tall getting to meet them today. And Lord, we just pray for your power in Colorado and Oregon and everywhere across the United States, that people will love this country, that they will honor this country, honor the Constitution, and make laws that will protect kids. And that people that are being lukewarm and not stepping up, Lord, help them to step up and help protect kids. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Well, we'll do this again. And Lori, we're going to talk more now because I've got about 400 questions for you after this. I'll talk to our sponsor and stuff. If there's a chance for Judy and I to come back there and do anything to help, we will. And, it's such a great fight, and appreciate you guys a ton.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You betcha. We'll talk to you next time. Maybe the next hot topic, Lori, we'll get this thing going again, and we'll talk about it again.
Sounds great. I always appreciate the opportunity to connect.
Absolutely. This is Stand Tall with Dave Brown and produced Paige today. And, go to Apple CarPlay, Spotify, go on to X and TikTok and Instagram, all those things for the reels. And we're going to keep pushing this message all the way. So we'll talk to you later. Bye.